Lisa, is your dog feeling better? Good to hear.
Yeah, she had some weird thing on her neck, and I think it was just excessive leash pulling that caused, like, you touch her and she wouldn't, you wouldn't even have to touch her, she was just yelping, and it was just
Oh no.
piercing and scary.
Oh, poor thing.
Yeah, but no, she's much better now. Right now she's just trying to get my attention. Come here. Say hello, everybody's.
Oh boy, hello.
Hello.
Squirm up.
Say hi. So that's what we're doing. Okay.
So we're waiting for Chris.
He said he's coming. He's just trying to type a few things before jumping on the meeting.
Okay. I would think that unless we have more participants who haven't been here before, that we can forego the preliminary rules of procedure unless someone new comes on and wants to speak from the community. I'll just reiterate the applicant's time.
And Al, and to the board, just as a reminder, since the first case on the agenda appeared at the last meeting as well, I didn't put the slides that they presented in the November meeting. So
Right.
unless there's any other questions, the board can jump in to staff comments, or if there are any other questions, we can bring the applicant on as a panelist to answer any questions.
Okay. Did Chris give you an idea of when he's going to jump on?
He's here.
Ah, excellent. There you are. Hello, Chris.
Good evening.
Okay, we'll get started then. We have 2 items on the agenda, and this is the meeting of December of the Albany City Planning Board. And the 2 items that we have on the agenda is split between a public hearing agenda and then a public meeting agenda. As I mentioned, I will give the rules of procedure right now just for the presenters and the applicants, as we don't have anybody from the public. We can forego that part of the rules of procedure unless we see that someone from the public is going to come on board. So the first item on the agenda for the public hearing is 289 Hudson Avenue, and the applicant is Bill Hamill. And in the RT zoning district, the request is a conditional use permit to convert 3,700 square feet of office space into 2 dwelling units. And we had seen this project both at a workshop and also at the November 23rd meeting. And we don't have all of the plans with us as we saw that before and all of the details. But I would ask the applicants if they want to do any presentation. You have 6 minutes since we saw this before.
I'm just going to promote the applicant to be a panelist and they can respond.
Okay.
Okay, as I toggled around to get my stop video and unmuted, I believe that everything I covered from the November 23rd sums it up as far as our presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay.
No.
Zach, you want to review any of the staff recommendations and the conditions concerning conditional use?
Yeah, I can go through these quickly. So there's 7 review standards. The first is whether it complies with the code, which it complies with the USDO and the rest of the city code. Whether it creates a random pattern of development. It's not a random pattern of development because it's the reuse of an existing building, and it's changing into a residential use, which is more consistent with the predominant uses within the RT townhouse zoning district. It wouldn't create a financial or environmental impact on adjacent properties. One of the common comments we hear about in more dense neighborhoods such as RT zoning districts is related to trash pickup and storage, and our staff worked with the applicant to ensure there's an indoor trash storage area to reduce that impact. And since it's a low intensity use, overall, this is not going to create any negative impacts on the surrounding area. Whether the project is consistent with the purpose and objectives of the RT zoning district. The purpose of the district is to provide for neighborhoods with a blend of residences. The proposed use isn't a townhouse, but the purpose statement for the district goes on to say that a mix of uses is permitted within the existing building typologies and built fabric. This conversion is reutilizing an existing building and meets the purpose for the district. The 5th review standard is whether it results in any harmful cumulative impacts or effects. There are nearby multifamily structures, but through the design modifications for indoor trash storage, and this is also decreasing the intensity of the use of the property. It's not going to result in any harmful impacts or effects on the surrounding neighborhood. Whether the project would create an excessive burden on public improvements or services. It's an existing building that has utility connections, and it's supported by a number of facilities and services already. The conversion wouldn't create a burden on these services. And finally, whether it's a necessary and desirable service that's in the interest of the public convenience. It promotes the continued use of a contributing historic structure within a local historic district, and it's providing new housing units that are close to a number of major employers. The proposed project is retaining existing building elements and openings, and the new trash storage area will resolve trash storage issues within a dense neighborhood. So it's contributing to the overall general welfare and the surrounding neighborhood. So based on all these factors, our recommendation is for approval for this project. Are there any questions from the board members?
Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a recommendation to approve the project as presented.
So moved.
It's moved by Martin Hall,
Second.
second by Glenard. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. It's been approved unanimously. Oh, there we go. It has been approved unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next project. And that closes the public hearing. And now we're into the public meeting. And this project is 17, 19, 21, and 25 Erie Boulevard. The applicant is the Erie Boulevard Association, LLC, represented today by Jeff Buell. And this is in a form-based warehouse district, and we're undertaking a major development plan review to convert the existing Huck Finn's warehouse to 261 apartments and about 9,200 square feet of recreational uses, and as well as expanding an existing parking lot by 218 spaces. We've seen this project a number of times, including 3 planning board meetings in May, August, and September, as well as on a couple of workshops. So I think the board is somewhat familiar with the project. We also did a walkthrough of the project. And I would invite Jeff Buell to give us an update, and you have 6 minutes.
All right. Well, thank you for having us here tonight. I would say I'll use a lot less than 6, taking a page out of the previous presenter and saying I'm here for questions. Very much appreciate the board's willingness to hear this over a number of months and to visit the site with us to take a look at what we're doing. Pending this approval, we are ready to close by the end of the year, and we will start construction in January and begin the long journey of redeveloping this building. I think Zach and Brad have been incredible in getting through what is a very complicated process. And I think we've got all our comments from staff, and I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Does the board have questions?
Nope, not at this time.
I just have one, Jeff. I just wanted to make it clear that my understanding was that you had proposed in the past, associated somewhat with this project, but also potential other projects, to take the old Hoffman's Playland and move it either to near the central warehouse or down in the Corning Preserve. But I understand that that's not now part of the project. How does that all sift out?
Yeah, so when we started this whole thing, I said to Jeff Sperber, I don't want to be the guy that moves Huck Finn's Playland. So we'd be excited to do this project, but under the guise of not moving the Playland. And then as the central warehouse story started to unfold and the Skyway really started being developed, there's a few spots down there where you can look and say, hey, boy, a plugged-in Playland here would make a lot of sense for the downtown, for the users of the Playland. And so I would say, Al, that it's kind of out there in the ether that if something happens with Central Warehouse, we would propose a Huck Finn Playland shift down there. But that's all pending, can we make the numbers work, and is there a want by the community to really plus that up? Really, the concept is like, can we have an amusement park of sorts along the river, which is what you see in a lot of big cities. So it's there, and it's part of what I would say is our long-term hope to work with the city to formalize what are the connection points between what's been called the warehouse district and downtown, and how do we do a good connection between the two?
Okay.
Will the smaller version of Huck Finn's store be part of the project, or is that
Yeah, so
against that too?
yeah, we're negotiating the lease right now with the guys who are the owners of the store and the building. Right now, we're contemplating about 25,000 square feet, Martin, right about in there. That store, you know, they think they can do a very large volume of sales comparatively to the existing space. The business has changed a lot. It'll be a plussed up showroom. You know, Jeff does a really good job of telling how his customer went, you know, 20 years ago, the customer would come in and he would wander around and figure out what he wanted to buy. And today the customer comes in and they, you know, they've seen an ad or they know what they're looking for. And so it really becomes, the business becomes a purchasing challenge more than anything else. So we're going to be excited to have them there. We think it adds to the uniqueness of this project. You know, this is a genuine mixed use project. This one's unique. And mixed use in that a lot of you have the mixed uses really on the same floor level. This isn't a ground floor with apartments above it. This is just a massive building that has a lot of different uses.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Zach, I would then ask you if when we go through this project, the proposal doesn't mention commercial use. It only mentions the apartments and the indoor recreational space, as well as parking. In the official notes and approvals, should we not have some mention of the size of the commercial space?
Yeah, thanks, Al, for that question. So really, when we're looking at, drafting kind of these descriptions of the project, we normally show what is a change for the site. So there's currently, a restaurant on site that's proposed to be retained. There's currently, a furniture store on site that's proposed to be retained. It's just decreased in size. So that's why that's not mentioned within this project description right here. If that's something we want to add to the decision, I'm more than happy to add that just for clarity. But that's why that's not there.
Well, I know it's in the plans. It's been shown in the plans, and as long as it's been shown in the plans, I don't have a problem with it. Then I didn't realize that we didn't have to necessarily mention that since there are existing uses. Okay, any other questions? All right, we have a fairly extensive staff report. There's some items and issues that have been analyzed, and I hope that the board did have the opportunity to read the final version of the staff report, because some conditions were added at the end that if we do approve this, these conditions are different from what was sent out earlier. So Zach, you want to run through I guess we got a couple of pieces to this, but first, I guess the comments concerning the county planning board.
Yeah, quickly before we do that, there is someone that joined. So just if the person attending, there's only one person attending, but if they wanted to provide public comment, just to give them that opportunity before going into the review of the project.
Okay, then we will say to the person who is from the public and would like to make a comment that you have 3 minutes to make your presentation and concern, if any, and then Zach will tell you how you'll be able to see the amount of time that you have.
And now just for clarification, Ms. Kane, who's attending, she didn't ask to speak. I was just making sure that she had that opportunity since at the beginning of the meeting, she wasn't there and we didn't explain the public comment procedures. I'll just give it a few seconds for Ms. Kane if she does want to raise her hand or want to speak, and then I'll just move into the rest of the project.
Okay.
Okay. So moving, just listening. Okay. Thank you. So I didn't put this in the slides specifically, or the comment letter, the slides specifically. But for the county recommendation, there were 2 items that they mentioned, the last 2, stating that a demolition review is required and that the project should comply with all form-based standards. To start with the first one, the project is not proposing any demolition of accessory or principal structures, so it doesn't meet the threshold for a demolition review. And for the second, the project is located in a form-based district, but the form-based district design standards only apply when a new principal structure is proposed. So those last comments don't really apply for this project. I just wanted to provide some clarification. The first 4 comments, in our department's opinion, they're appropriate, and 2 of them have been placed as recommended conditions of approval as well. So just wanted to provide some kind of clarification for the board members as you were looking through that recommendation. I think whether or not you want to formally override that recommendation is up to you. Really either way, nothing's going to change in terms of how the applicant needs to comply with the project. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention. The next thing on this slide is just a screenshot of the water department approval letter that we received this afternoon. They did recommend 2 conditions. Those conditions will be on a later slide in larger font, so it's a little bit easier to read. So I'm going to move first into the waiver standard. This project did submit a development plan review waiver request. That is for a section relating to landscaping with vegetative coverage, shrubs, or trees when a primary structure is located more than 20 feet from the front lot line. So 20% is required. There's 55,812 square feet of space between the front facade and the front lot line. So that would require 11,162 square feet of landscaping. The applicant is proposing 5%. I'll go through the waiver review standards just to show how the applicant complies, doesn't comply with the review standards. The first is whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood. Since there's no changes proposed to the front portion of the site, it's not going to create an undesirable change or detriment to nearby properties since it's an existing condition. Number 2 is whether the benefit sought could be achieved by another feasible method. The applicant could theoretically modify the design of the parking lot. However, a portion of the city right-of-way is pre-existing as a parking lot and landscaping for the site. So by removing what is currently used within the right-of-way for parking for the site, as well as the required space for that 20% of landscaping, that would create a situation where the applicant would have to request a parking waiver for the project at that point, which would be a more significant request than the proposed waiver for the landscaping requirement. And additionally, while the applicant could look at portions in the rear of the site, there are some limitations because of utilities as well that limit the portions of the site that they can construct on as well. So given all these factors, this is the minimum waiver feasible in order to achieve the benefits sought. The third, whether the waiver is substantial. The structure has a front setback that ranges from about 27 feet to 121 feet from the right-of-way, and it's a pre-existing use and lot configuration. While a significant portion is not landscaped at this point, they are proposing streetscape improvements beyond USDO requirements in the right-of-way that'll achieve a similar effect to the requirement. And there is a significantly large portion of the right-of-way that is already landscaped as well, which is achieving the same benefit sought by this requirement. So based on these factors, the proposed waiver is not substantial. The fourth standard is whether the waiver will have an adverse impact on the environmental conditions of the neighborhood or district. Again, similar to the review standard, the first review standard, there's no changes to the existing site, so the waiver would not create any negative impacts on nearby properties. And the fifth, whether the difficulty is self-created. It is self-created. They're dealing with a situation where it's a pre-existing feature of the site, but they could theoretically modify it. But again, as discussed under the second review standard, if they were to comply with this requirement, it would require a larger waiver for the parking standards as a result. And it's not dispositive for the requested variance being self-created. Any other questions before I move into the development plan review standards?
Hearing none, we can move on.
Okay. All right, so there are 6 review standards for development plan review. The first is whether any significant adverse impacts would be created. The application's been approved by all departments, barring the Division of Engineering. As one of the recommended conditions, we're recommending that the applicant satisfy all conditions placed by the Division of Engineering. We're anticipating to receive a comment letter soon. And based on the previous comment letter, the noted issues were minor. So it's anticipated that it'll be relatively minor issues to satisfy or comments to satisfy. And additionally, there are recommended conditions of approval based on the comment letter from the Department of Water and Water Supply that were sent over today. So based on all of these, the proposed project would not result in any significant negative adverse impacts on the surrounding area. The second is whether it would create any risks to the public health or safety. None of the uses of the site would create any safety risks for the public health or safety. Whether the project is consistent with any prior approvals or conditions. The 2 relevant cases, there was a BZA case in 1986 for the construction of a 100 square foot sign 8 feet from the lot line, which was approved. There weren't any conditions placed on this approval, and it doesn't have any relevance to the current case. The project site was also subject to of a planning board case in 1986. The project was approved with 2 conditions. Those 2 conditions were satisfied in 1988. So the project is consistent with all relevant prior approvals or conditions. Fourth is whether it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. The project is consistent with strategy ART 3, which is adaptively reusing historic and non-historic structures and brownfields remediation projects. This is proactively and adaptively reusing the site for multifamily dwelling, continuing the use for a furniture store, as well as for new use of indoor recreation, which will prevent abandonment and disuse of the structure, and that complies with the comprehensive plan. The fifth is whether it's consistent with all provisions of the USDO and the city code, and through the granting of the waiver and satisfying the comments from the Division of Engineering and Department of Water and Water Supply, it will comply. And the sixth is whether the project complies with all requirements and conditions of prior development permits and approvals. As discussed under the third reviewed standard, it's in compliance with all of those previous development permits and approvals. So there are three proposed actions. The first is for seeker. The recommended action from staff is a negative declaration. For the development plan review waiver, the recommended action is approval with the condition stated below, which is prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant must receive approval from the City of Albany for a licensing agreement for the portion of the city right-of-way being used for parking, snow storage, and landscaping. This was identified by our staff as well as the Department of General Services. It's not typical that portion of the city right-of-way is used for snow storage, but this portion of the right-of-way has historically been used by the occupant of the site. So the applicant is in the process of working with city departments. They're meeting with city staff on Thursday to go over establishing a formalized agreement for the use of this space. And then for the development plan review itself, there's a recommended approval with the following conditions. The first condition is the same as the one from the development plan review waiver. The second recommended condition is prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant must satisfy all conditions and requirements placed by the Division of Engineering for the project. Third condition is prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant shall receive MS4 acceptance from the City of Albany Stormwater Program Manager and obtain coverage under the state's Speedies permit for construction activity. Condition 4, prior to the issuance of building permits, the applicant shall obtain approval from the Department of Health for a sewer extension. And number 5, prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, including a temporary certificate of occupancy, the applicant must implement an affordable housing compliance plan.
Okay, before we act
from the
on,
board members?
yeah, go on. Anybody have questions on the development plan review process or any of the conditions that have been stated? Okay, before we act on those, I would like to get a sense of the board whether it wants to formally vote on the two requirements that the county planning board had mentioned that were not accurate. As Zach said, they weren't, these are not specifically necessary to approve the plan, but to reiterate, one of them was that demolition review is required. And the only thing that's being demolished on the site is the removal of some bollards and some pavement, which doesn't require demolition review. And the second item was that the applicant is supposed to basically list all the elements in a on all the other projects in a form-based district, but that's only for new construction, and this is not new construction. So does the board want to act on those and override the recommendation of the county planning board? If so, all four would have to vote affirmatively. Again, it's not required, but I just wanted to put it out there in case the board felt strongly one way or the other. Are there any thoughts on that? Okay, I don't have any, I don't hear anything, so I'm assuming that you're not. Yeah.
While I'm not necessarily gung-ho about putting up a vote, I would say that this is more of a question for either Zach or Brad or somebody from staff, that it's documented as to why a vote wasn't necessary to be taken in the file for the project. If this was ever to come up for it as an issue and somebody would say, well, the county said we should do this, and we want the explanation as to why no vote was taken, because it wasn't applicable to the case.
Zach, can you respond, or Martha, either one
Yeah.
of you?
Yeah, I can respond quickly. So, you know, similar to previous instances where the board has overruled the county planning board, or in any instance where, you know, a local review board overrules a county planning board, they're supposed to provide a written justification for the reasoning. So in previous instances where, you know, the city's planning board has overruled the county planning board's decision, what I do is I, you know, draft a letter, you know, that's reviewed usually by Al or by multiple board members, just outlining when the vote took place, the reasoning for overruling the decision, and providing, you know, any additional context that's needed. You know, similar in this case, when I send the decision of how, you know, the city planning board voted back to the county planning board, if you choose to agree with the recommendations, I can provide a similar response letter that just states, you know, that the city planning board agreed with the first 4 comments. And while it's not a formal overruling, the last 2 comments were not applicable, just to memorialize that. So we could have it that way. There could just be, you know, a memo drafted as well that we just put in the project record as well. But those could be 2 options to kind of address that issue.
Sound okay, Chris?
And
Yes,
unless,
I'm fine with it. I just don't want it to come across to someone who is not in this meeting as if it was ignored. We're not ignoring it. What we're saying is that we don't need to take a affirmative or negative action against it.
Okay, so then the report back to the county planning board will state that for the record.
I'll just chime in, sorry. So from what I found so far in real time, that a supermajority vote is required by the municipal board to override a county planning board's recommendation.
Right, which would be all four of us if we voted on it. But what I'm hearing is that Zach will include that in the official memorandum back to the county planning board. Okay. The first item that we need to move on is the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And it is recommended that we have a negative declaration for seeker. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Hello? I think people are
I
muted.
move out.
Okay.
And I'll second
Oh.
it.
Chris.
Okay. All those in favor of negative declaration, please say aye.
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 Okay, that passes unanimously. The second action is the waiver to approve with the condition that the applicant must receive approval from the city of Albany for a licensing agreement for the portion of the city right of way to be used for parking, snow storage, and landscaping. Request a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Moved by Martin Hall. Is there a second? Well, I will second it since people, I think, are still muted.
You can't unmute, Al. Sorry. Yes. If it's
Okay,
second.
Chris seconded. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Approved. And then the third recommendation is to approve the development plan with these conditions, and I will read them for the record. Condition number 1 is the applicant must receive approval from the city of Albany, again, for licensing agreement for the portion of the city right-of-way used for parking, snow storage, and landscaping. The second condition is before an issuance of the building permit, the applicant must satisfy all conditions and requirements placed by the Division of Engineering. The third condition is prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant must receive MS4 acceptance from the City of Albany Stormwater Program Manager and obtain coverage under the state's SPDES permit for construction activity. And then finally, well, there's 2 more. Condition number 4 is that before the issuance of a building permit, the applicant must also obtain approval from the Department of Health for a sewer extension. And I would like to make a suggestion there before we go on, and that is to identify which Department of Health. Is it the state or the county? So can we add that?
That would be from the County Department of Health. Yeah,
Well,
we can add that.
Okay, thank you. So we will amend that condition to state the approval shall be by the County Department of Health. And the 5th condition is prior to the issuance of the occupancy permit or the temporary certificate of occupancy, that the applicant must implement an affordable housing compliance plan. I will place this in motion. So I will place the motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I heard 2 seconds. I'll go with the first one I heard, which is Martin Hall.
Okay.
So like Jeopardy, you got to be really fast on the unmuting button. Okay, any further comments or questions before we move? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, Jeff, you have another challenging project to go to.
We will get to work.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Zach, are there any other items or business to come before the board?
Just to let all of you know, we have not received any complete applications, or there's not any projects that are complete enough to appear on the December 14th meeting that was previously scheduled. So I'm planning to cancel that, and we'll send a cancellation notice out tomorrow, just as a heads up. And just as a reminder, the next meeting of the board will take place on January 11th in 2022. I'm going to be sending out a meeting series in the next few weeks for 2022, just so that you have that. And just as a reminder, those meetings are going to go to an every 3-week format instead of every 2 weeks. But again, as we progress forward, there will be some times where the board convenes where it's both a meeting and a workshop, or a meeting, workshop, and a hearing.
Okay, thank you. Also, Zach, maybe you can do this off after we leave. And Ms. Kane did have a question about the trees and how they were chosen and what's going to be planted. So you might be able to connect with her so that you can answer that.
And I can provide a quick answer as well, Ms. Kane. The tree requirements are part of the USDO for landscaping along the property frontage. So there are certain diameter breast width or certain size of tree that needs to be planted within the right of way based on the number of square feet of frontage along the property. So that's why those trees were planted. We do refer that out to city departments to ensure that it meets city standards, or if there's any potential issues from our Department of General Services, that those are identified early on. But that's why those particular trees were selected.
Okay. So we will see each other in the new year, and I wish everyone a really great Christmas holiday and New Year holiday. And let's hope for a better 2022.
All right, happy holidays to you as well.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Same to you, and so moved.
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please push the button.
Aye.
Bye. Happy holidays.
Bye.
Yep, happy holidays. Bye-bye.